word that brings to mind a variety of mental images, but ultimately it's a person who's there to help and guide another person or team toward their ultimate goals and success. To guide us and be our coach for the next little bit, I have with me our good friend, Mr. John C. Maxwell. John, as you may know, is an internationally recognized leadership expert, speaker, coach, and author. He is also the founder of Equip and the John Maxwell Company, organizations that have trained and coached millions of leaders worldwide. He brings his wisdom to the pages of success every month. And so, as an added bonus this month, we get to hear that same wisdom straight from the man himself on this month's audio. John, as always, a great joy to be with you. Welcome.
It's my joy, my friend. Always delighted to be with you in the Success family.
Now, John, you had one of the all-time greatest coaches I think there ever was as a mentor for a long time in your life. He was famous both on and off the court for his accomplishments. Share a little bit about your relationship with the famous basketball coach, John Wooden, and how it shaped you as a person and as a coach, and maybe one of your most special memories getting coached by that man.
Well, to be with Coach Wooden was what he said, but it was who he was. And I think the great coaches not only say great things that add value to you, I think they model and back up everything they say, and that's Coach Wooden. You really went to Coach and experienced him. A humble man, a quiet man, a man who loved to listen, a man who was very contemplative, very thoughtful. There'd be times when I would ask him a question, Darren, and he might wait for a minute, just sitting there, and I could tell mentally processing what I said and then kind of working through his own mind how he could best help me. And I can remember my first time. When you talk about memorable times, oh my gosh, they were all memorable. But I remember the first time that I had the opportunity to sit down with him for about 3 hours. And the biggest question on my heart wasn't the question I was going to ask Coach. I wanted to do such a good job as far as asking questions that without me asking him at the end, he would give me an invitation to come back. Mm-hmm. And I can still remember, I had 7 or 8 pages of legal pad just full of questions. And I just kept asking him questions, writing down, learning so much. And I'll never forget, after about 2.5 hours of that straight, he looked at me and he said, John, he said, you came very well prepared. And I said, well, I want to honor you. I mean, after all, I wouldn't want to waste your time. And he smiled and he said, well, this has been certainly no waste of time. And he said, I can tell you right now, we're not going to get through all your questions, so you can come back. And I could remember, Darren, my heart leaped. I mean, it was like, oh, touchdown. It was kind of like everything I received from you was truly wonderful. But when you said I could come back, I know now I'm going to receive more from you. And I think that was what was so beautiful about this man, that he was almost like an endless resource, a well that was never going to run out of water. And that began the relationships. I also remember walking out of his little apartment and going to my car. And when I got to my car, the gentleman that was with me, his name was Jeff, who really introduced me to Coach. He had known Coach for many years. He said, John, turn around. And I turned around from my car and I looked up on the porch where Coach Wood's little apartment was. And there he stood, waving to me with that beautiful smile of his. And Darren, every time I went to see him, every time when I would go to my car, I would just turn around, and I knew he would be waiting to just wave and smile. And that's why, you experienced John Wooden. This man was great from the inside out, and what you got on the outside was a result of everything that he had literally had within himself for many years. And I think that's what makes him, kind of sets him apart from probably other coaches that I ever had. He was greater as a person than he was in his reputation. And you could tell that when you sat with him, that the substance there was very deep and very solid.
How many people can you say that about, where they're a better person authentically than maybe their reputation or their PR rap sheet says about them? That's extraordinary. I'm glad you were challenged also in your first time with Coach Wooden, because you perfected the art of asking great questions. In fact, if people don't know, John has a new book out, which I think is great, which is Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. So because of that great challenge, we now all benefit from the tutelage that John gave you, and now the perfection of that expertise in a new piece of work.
And Darren, one quick thought. When we talk about his greatness, I mean, he was bigger on the inside than the outside. And I had him in a simulcast when he was probably about 93. And I said, Coach, live simulcast, 2,000 people in the auditorium, about 700 locations across the country. I said, Coach, you're not going to live forever. And when you pass away, what do you want to be known for? And I'll never forget his answer. I mean, immediately he said, well, John, and he tilted his head like I've seen him do hundreds of times. He said, well, John, it certainly isn't going to be national championships and trophies and honors. And Darren, the crowd gasped. And he said, what I want him to say is that I was a good man, and a man that helped people and cared for people. And he began to talk about all of these virtues. And little did I realize that when I went to his memorial service out at Poly Pavilion in L.A., that literally the thing that he wanted was the thing they talked about most. I mean, his players got up and they talked about winning national championships, but most of them said it was the virtues and the principles that they learned from him that really changed their life. And I think that can only happen in a coaching situation when there's greatness within that is even greater than the greatness that they're known for on the outside.
Well, I hope a lot of leaders are listening, that this should be the reputation that they seek, the attributes and the virtues,
absolutely,
rather than the reputation created by your PR department. So speaking of great coaches, besides your mom, who is unfortunately no longer with us, and your father, who's still going strong, is there anyone else in your life who's been your coach over the years and really helped you become the man that you are today?
Well, I could probably give you 18 to 20 names. But what's interesting is, outside of my father, who has been a constant in my life, and the kind of intense mentoring I had with Coach Wood in the last 10, 12 years of his life, all my coaches have been basically seasonal in my life. In other words, Darren, you know as well as I do, in our growth journey, there are times when we get to a stage where we really need some help. And I would seek out people that were really good at what I needed at that moment, and they were so beneficial to me in helping me get through that season. And then I would go to another coach. And I think that's very important to know, because I think we have sometimes a misconception that I'm going to get one coach for life and this person's going to be able to sustain me and be my coach. And I don't think that is true. In fact, on maybe 3 or 4 occasions, I can remember when I was being coached and mentored, where I inside began to realize that I had maybe even outgrown the person that was mentoring me. And I think that's a compliment, by the way, to a person that mentors me. I hope every person I coach and mentor outgrows me. I hope every one of them do better than what I did, and I hope they go higher than me. So that's a compliment. But the same sense, most of my coaches have been seasonal in my life, and where I am presently is what I seek as far as advice and counsel presently. And I think sometimes we kind of look for a lifetime coach when we really probably need maybe a 6-month or a year coach.
Yeah, it's great context to look at seasons, and I also look at it as areas of life
yes,
and specifically too, like my relationship coach per se wouldn't be the best for my speaking coach, and my health coach might not be the best for my relationship coach. And so you look for also areas of discipline where you want great coaching, and you don't expect them to be all things in every area. So let's talk about that. I mean, explain when we know it's time to seek coaching in what areas of our life, and then what's the best way to go about finding that right fit coach?
Well, I think that for me, I knew I needed a coach because I knew what I didn't know. And it was kind of like, if I don't have somebody help me, I can figure it out, but it's going to take me a lot longer than if I could have somebody come alongside of me. And I've always had, Darren, a hunger. I'm talking now about being coached. I've always had a hunger to learn. And so when I look at a person coming to me, I look for, are they hungry? And when I say that, I have to look at 2 things. I have to look at words and I have to look at deeds. And what I've discovered in mentoring people is people are much more hungry in words than they are in deeds. And they're much more intense in what they say they want and what they show that they want. And that's why Coach Wooden always said to his players, don't tell me what you want me to know. Show me what you want me to know. In other words, let me see it in the behavior. And So I look at that hunger and I say, okay, can they back up what they say? Are they wanting mentoring just for the moment to fix a problem, or are they wanting mentoring to really develop them? Because I think a lot of people, what they really want is a quick fix, and as soon as they get it, they move on, not realizing that what they need is more than a quick fix. They need a context. They need something bigger than, oh, I just solved my problem. I've got to know why I had the problem, how I can avoid that problem again, how I can rise above that problem. In other words, they've got to want and have a hunger for something bigger than just the answer. If they're just looking for an answer, I think that the mentoring-coaching relationship gets very shallow, and it's kind of a fleeting type of a deal. And then the other real quick thought, Darren, is they have to have a teachable spirit. And teachable spirit basically says, I want to learn. And a teachable spirit, I've seen people that are highly successful that had a teachable spirit. I've seen people that needed a lot of coaching that weren't teachable at all. But it's a mindset. It's an attitude. It basically says, you know something that I don't know, and I so desperately want to learn from you. And there's a humility about a teachable spirit. There's a vulnerability. There's an openness. There's an authenticity about that human and that teachable spirit. And I can tell you for sure they've gotten over themselves. I mean, too many people have what I call the disease of me. I mean, they got a problem, and the problem is they just can't get beyond who they are. Mm-hmm. And so I look for kind of that hunger and that teachable spirit. And if I see that, well, at least I have a green light to kind of maybe begin that relationship with them.
Let's go back to those that are seeking a coach, because I think, like anything, there are misconceptions out there about coaching. I think it's often made out to be too grandiose, kind of like finding a mentor. It's like this big ordeal, and so it almost is a chasm that they can use as an excuse to not, get going on their own. Tell us how we need to look at this idea of having a coach. Maybe share a few of the more common misconceptions that you've heard about the difficulty in finding a coach or finding a mentor, and what would be some straight points of advice to get somebody off the hump to get it done.
Well, Darren, every day I'm asking, I'm sure you are, anybody that's kind of a public figure is asked to mentor somebody every day of their life. And I always laugh and I say, you don't want me to be your mentor. I'm not that good. I mean, I probably would really be a good mentor coach in about 5 areas of my life. And the rest, I would just have to say with integrity, you just don't want me to coach you because I'm not that good myself. In fact, I need coaching. So it's like this idea that, one coach for a lifetime, that's a misconception, or one coach can meet all of my needs. That's way off. And I'll tell you another one. I think that, and you mentioned it, or you indicated a little bit in your question, and that is the fact that we're waiting for that one coach, and so we can't find that one coach, so we don't get moving on it with our life. In the beginning, I had no influence. I had nobody that I even knew who could coach me. So really, I would say outside of my father, Darren, I probably had in my 20s, I bet I had a 5-year period where all of my coaching and mentoring came from back then, tapes or going to a conference and listening, or maybe watching a video, and I never met any of my mentors and coaches because I didn't have enough influence to get in the door with them, and it was okay with me. Here's the key: I think you take what you have right now and what you can get right now, understanding that if you'll move in that direction, other things will open. But if we wait for the ideal situation to occur or happen to you before you make a move, you'll never make a move. There's no such thing as, I had the ideal situation, so I moved. It was like I moved until I got the ideal situation.
Yeah, this is an important point. 99% of all the mentorships that I've had came from their materials, yes. Their books, their audio programs, their seminars. Even my own personal mentor, Jim Rohn, 99% of the value I ever got from him were through his materials. An occasional lunch or dinner was nice and lovely, but my real mentorship came through his organized materials. And right now, John, I'm getting mentored by Coach K, who we're going to have on the cover of Success Magazine. I'm reading his book, and man, there's some awesome mentorship that I'm getting in that book. And then I'm also being mentored by Abraham Lincoln. I'm reading one of the biographies that have been released about him recently, and incredible mentorship there. So I think everybody needs to understand that mentorship can, and maybe even oftentimes even better because these people have organized the materials, compacted it into a cover of a book. And so in short form order, you're getting the best that they've got, right?
Oh, no question.
So let's talk about the process of coaching. It's obviously not an overnight quick fix. So describe how you go about the process when you're coaching someone. Where do you start and what sort of path do you take somebody on in order to move them from point A to point B?
Well, the first thing I want to do with them is talk to them about upfront expectations. Before you can ever have a great relationship, you basically have to know where that relationship is going. And there are several upfront expectations I have with a person when I begin to mentor them. But one of them I began to share with them very quickly is that I'm much more interested in helping them become growth-oriented than goal-oriented. Mm-hmm. And I'm not anti-goals at all, but I am much more pro-growth. Because you never outgrow what I've had people meet goals and plateau, but I've never had somebody say I know everything in the world and I've totally grown to my capacity, and so therefore I can take it easy. So I look at them and I share with them. I really want you to be growth oriented and focus on that more than goal oriented. In fact, if you're growth oriented, you'll hit all your goals and keep on going because you're growth oriented, not goal oriented. And I talk to them about the fact that I would expect them to reproduce themselves. I don't want to mentor a reservoir. I don't want to pour into somebody and then they dam it all up and hold it. I want to mentor them to be a river, and I want them to literally take what I get and pass it on. One of the greatest ways to grow is to immediately share what you've learned. And this is a mistake a lot of people make because they say, well, I want to make sure I get the idea down really well before I teach it. And I said, no, you'll get it well if you'd start teaching it immediately. And so I talk to them about that. And as a person that's done a lot of mentoring, I've had to really, because of time and because I've done this, thousands and thousands of times, I had to learn as a mentor that just because I sow into a person, that doesn't mean that they're going to grow. And just because that person shows up doesn't mean that they're going to grow. I mean, all I ask is that a person takes what I share with them and they get better, and that they learn and they apply it. And so right up front, I really kind of try to help them understand that we're into application and that this isn't a classroom where you just get good thoughts and good ideas and you've got to flesh them out and you've got to apply them, and I want to see it kind of work in your life. I had a friend named Courtney McBath who I mentored, and I love this. The second time he came back to me, here's what he said to me, Darren. He said, okay, the last time we were together, this is what you said. This is what I understood. This is what I did. Did I do it right? Will you mentor me again? I mean, I'm standing up giving a high five and say, yes, I will mentor you again. And I didn't ask him to go there. He knew that if he was going to sit there at my feet and be mentored, that he needed to show me a return on my investment in him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's nothing more invalidating or disappointing when you finally have poured yourself, taken time, answered a request, poured yourself into somebody, and then they don't do anything with it. And at the other side of that, there's nothing more exhilarating and soulfully fulfilling when you have done that and they've come back and shown you their results from it, knowing that you could say, I helped do that.
You're right on. Absolutely.
Yeah, exhilarating. So let's move it from an individual to a business. Explain why a business, not just an individual, should invest in coaching programs. Speak to the business owners of what the ROI looks like when you invest in coaching programs on a business level.
I was a couple of years ago speaking for AT&T, and the CEO of the company introduced me, and he had the top 300 people of the company there. And his last words before I came on stage, as he was introducing me as a person that developed people, is he said, "We all know that people are the most appreciable asset that we have in AT&T and any company. You're our appreciable asset." And he was a good friend, so I could come in behind him, and I said, that is only true if the company really mentors and resources you and puts you in a development growth program. People don't appreciate automatically. People don't get automatically better. So a company has to be intentional. And what always amazes me is that we so often look for the quick fix in organizations that we'll work on. We'll throw money at marketing. We'll throw money at ideas. We'll throw money when we're getting ready to have a new venture, and we bypass the people that can get better, that can make everything better in our company. And that's the mentoring of those individuals. And let's put it this way. I'm still being mentored. And in every one of my companies, I make sure at least 2 times a year we get somebody from the outside to come in and to teach us and to help us get better. And I insist it be from the outside. And why? I want somebody from the outside because they have fresh eyes. They have fresh ideas. And I think that too often we depend upon our own to mentor their own, and we miss some of the big things, some of the beautiful things, if we would just say, hey, come from the outside and come into my life. I have an inner circle, Darren, and that inner circle, they've been with me, many of them, for 20 plus years. I've got a pretty good core of people that have been with me for a long time. And there are some characteristics about that inner circle. They compliment me. They're strong where I'm not. Most of my inner circle, they have strengths that I do not have. So they come alongside of me and they're with me daily. They're in the game. They're committed to me. They're committed to the vision. That's the inner circle. But about 4 years ago, I realized I was missing something. And so I started what I call an outer circle. In the outer circle, they're not employed by me. They're not in it day to day. They know me well. And the difference is where my inner circle, their gifts are different than mine. My outer circle, their gifts are similar to mine. And so I go to them for creativity. I go for them to kind of tweak me because they know me so well and they're strong in the areas that I'm strong in. And I've just found incredible help from the outer circle. And again, this is somebody with fresh eyes. It's not their job to day make it happen for me, but they just give me something the inner circle cannot. Just as the inner circle, they give me things the outer circle cannot. So when it comes to business and when it comes to the fact that you're wanting to do your best to add value to people and make a profit and grow and do well, I cannot imagine any company not investing at least 10% of that bottom line profit right back into where their people are.
Yeah, 10% would be my suggestion as well. And I love this concept you're developing about the inner circle, and then this outer circle of people outside the organization to give you more direct and maybe even more brutal feedback, as those in the inner circle have something to protect. And usually it's their jobs or maybe even just a fragile relationship with you, right? But your outer circle could be a little bit more candid. I really like this concept. So one last question for you then, John, before we let you get back to being the powerful leadership coach that you are. Tell us about a coaching moment when someone was coaching you that truly altered the direction of your life and the lesson that you took from it. Maybe a lesson that we all can learn from through your experience.
Yeah, I was privileged in the 1980s to spend some time with Peter Drucker. And I can remember we really had done about 3 days together. And when it was finished, he said, now everything I've told you and shared with you, he said, John, everything I've said up to this point is not as important as what I'm just going to share with you right now. And I thought, oh my gosh, get ready, John. I mean, here comes the whole enchilada. And he looked at me and he said, I have a question to ask you. Who are you going to mentor now? And that was the day that I realized that I am always to be that river. And the greatest, I suppose, return I can give to the person that mentors me is to pass it on. And that one question just turned me and basically changed my life. And I could give you 2 or 3 other examples, but what I really want to, there's something I was thinking about today when I knew we were going to be together on this question. And it just hit me that I've never heard anybody talking about it, and I just want to take a moment because I have not developed the thought well, because it just really kind of came to my consciousness today. But here's what I want you to, perhaps all the listeners to hear, and this is key. When he said that to me, I left, and I thought about what he said for a period of time, and what I want to say is there is the coach that is outside of us, and that's that mentor. And then there should be the coach that's within inside of us. And what I want to say is that I began to coach myself off the coaching I was learning. And what I discovered was that when somebody gives me a great point, I can put it on as a quote and say, boy, that was a great thought. Or I can take that thought and apply it to myself, and do more than apply it to myself. I can flesh it out myself. And so I would encourage everybody that when they're getting coaching from the outside, they've got to take that coaching from the outside, and then they got to become their own personal coach. And it's what they do with it as a personal coach that's going to give the return to the outside coach. It's almost like I've got to hear it from without to get it within, but then I've got to work it within to get it without. And I think sometimes we kind of basically say, give me more, give me more, give me more, when the mentor probably should say, no. Coach yourself on this. Now, work it within yourself. Go inside of yourself and deal with the hard issues and overcome some of your own personal stuff on the inside so that you can really get better on the outside. And so when you said that to me, and I thought of Peter Drucker and what he did, and I thought I could give you other examples, I thought to myself, it was the coaching within me after he coached on the outside of me that really made the transformation in my life. And I think that's true with all of us. When we mentor somebody, we don't change them. The coaching within you is what changes you, not the coaching without you. The coaching without you enlightens you. The coaching within you changes you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that's amazing and beautiful. So, Mr. John C. Maxwell, I started by saying it's always a joy to be with you, and each time you exceed that expectation. So I just want to tell you once again, thank you for sharing your heart and for coming in and giving us your great coaching advice with us here at Success. Thanks so much for being with us today, John.
Thank you, Darren. You're a beautiful friend. You're a beautiful leader, and I just love what Success does for me and for so many people. Have a good one, friend.